Hello, for question number 1, what you want to do is first of all solve for the trig function. To do that, what you're going to do is if we start with -4 plus 8 cosine x equals 0. I have to start by adding 4 and adding 4. That's going to give me 8 cosine x is equal to 4. Divide by 8 and I get the cosine of x is equal to 1/2. Now that I have the cosine of x is equal to 1/2, that's what's going to go in there. The next thing it asks is for what quadrant is it in. We have quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, cosine is positive when x is positive. X is positive in this direction, so x would be positive in the first and the fourth quadrant. If this was a sine question, sine is equal to y, so that means it's positive when this is positive, so that would be 1 and 2. Tangent is going to be x over y. If it's, I'm sorry, let me back that up here just 1 second. It's y over x. So if tangent's y over x, it's positive when both x and y are positive, which is the first quadrant, or when they're both negative, which is the third quadrant. So tangent would be positive in the first and the third. So once you know which quadrants it's in, then we need to actually solve. Because it's asking for an exact value, that means that we have to look at the unit circle. When we look at the unit circle, we have to say where is x, because cosine is x, equal to 1/2. Well, x is equal to 1/2 here, and x is equal to a positive 1/2 down here. So this was the point 1/2 and the square root of 3 over 2, and this is going to be 1/2 and negative square root of 3 over 2. This ends up being up here, pi over 3, and then this one over here is 5 pi over 3. So those will be my two answers, pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. Okay, for this one, what we need to do is, again, isolate the trig function by solving for tangent of x. So if I start with -6 minus 7 times the tangent of x is equal to -7, I'm going to start off by adding 6 and adding 6. That means I get -7 times the tangent of x is equal to -1. Divide by -7, and I get the tangent of x is equal to 1/7. Because tangent is positive, that means that we are going to have tangent again. Because it's positive, tangent is equal to y over x, so that's where it's positive over positive or negative over negative. And x and y are both positive in the first quadrant, and they're both negative in the third, so it will be 1 and 3. And then we have tangent is equal to 1/7. So now I need to do the inverse tangent of 1/7, and that's going to equal 0.142 if you round it to 3 decimal places. Now, in order to find the second answer, because remember there's one in the first quadrant and there's one in the third quadrant, you just do pi plus 0.142, and when you do that, you should end up with something like 3.283 when rounded to 2 decimal places. Okay, in this one again, we have to start off by isolating the trig function. So if we start with -2 minus 7 cosecant x equals 7, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and I get -7 cosecant x equals 9. Divide by -7, divide by -7, and we get cosecant x equals -9 over 7. So that's what's going to go here. Now, I have to change this into either sine or cosine. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so that'd be 1 over the sine x is equal to -9 over 7, because cosecant is equal to 1 over sine. Now, I don't want it to be 1 over sine, I want it to be sine. So I have to do the reciprocal of this side to get sine on top, which means I have to do the reciprocal of this side, which means I'm going to put the 7 over the 9. So now I have to do the inverse sine of -7 over 9, and when you put that in your calculator, you're going to end up with a -0.891. So that's going to be my first answer here is negative 0.891. Because it's sine, to find the second one, I do pi minus a negative 0.891. And when you do that, you end up with 4.033. Now, in this case, I should have done this before, but we have sine, and it's equal to a negative value. Sine is negative when y is negative. Y is negative in the third and in the fourth quadrants, so third and fourth quadrant will be your answer for that. Okay, once again, we have to isolate the trig function first. So if we start with negative 2 minus 3, cosine times negative 5x minus 2 is equal to 0. So I start by adding 2 to both sides, and I get negative 3 cosine negative 5x minus 2 is equal to 2. Then I divide by a negative 3, and I get cosine of negative 5x minus 2 is equal to a negative 2/3. So that's what's going to go here is negative 2/3. Now we have to do the inverse cosine of negative 2/3. And when I do that, I end up with 2.3005. Because it's cosine, my other value that I'm going to have to work with is negative 2.3005. So I'm going to set up two equations. I have to set this equal to this and equal to this. So I'm going to start off by doing 2.3005 is equal to negative 5x minus 2, or we have negative 2.3005 is equal to negative 5x minus 2. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and I get 4.3005 is equal to negative 5x. Divide by negative 5, and I get that x is equal to negative 0.861. Over here, I'm going to add 2. I add 2, so I get 0.3005 is equal to negative 5x. Divide by a negative 5, and I'm going to get that x is equal to 0.061 or 01. So we'll have negative 0.861 and we'll have 0.060 for my two answers. Okay, to simplify this trig using trig identities, I'm going to start off by making sure that I turn everything into terms of sine and cosine. Cotangent is cosine x over sine x, and secant is secant squared is 1 over cosine squared x. So now it's just a matter of seeing what will cancel out, because anything on top can cancel with anything on bottom. So cosine squared cancels with cosine squared, sine cancels with sine. The only thing I'm left is cosine of x. Again, in this one, what I want to do is get everything in terms of sine and cosine. So we have the cosine of x plus tangent is sine x over cosine x, and then times sine x over 1. So we have cosine x plus sine times sine is sine squared x over cosine x. Now, I can't cancel my cosines because they're adding and not multiplying. So I need to make this into a single fraction. So to do that, I have to multiply this by cosine x over cosine x, and that's going to give me cosine squared x over cosine x. I did that so I could get a common denominator, plus sine squared x over cosine x. So now I have cosine squared x plus sine squared x on top over cosine on bottom. Well, cosine squared plus sine squared is equal to 1, so that's 1 over cosine x, and 1 over cosine x is equal to secant x. So my answer here should be secant x.